What is up, guys? Part 2 of the mini pond build. I'm gonna show you exactly how I planted it, my struggle, and yeah, a couple little tricks here and there. Let's get started. The first plants to go in are the carpeting plants. I've just prepared the Eleocharis pusilla, or aka Eleocharis mini, which is a very small hairgrass, as well as the Marsilea hirsuta. Both plants, super easy, come in a tissue culture cup, and the medium is liquid. So you just drain the medium, you take out the plant, and then you gently rip it apart from the root. This way you don't have individual leaves, but rather individual plantlets. I have the plants prepared here and gonna start planting from the bottom. This way I can, as soon as the plant's in, fill it up, which will become easier for planting the higher, the plateaus, you could say. Since the Eleocharis is taller, I'm going to start with the Eleocharis. This is the first little bush of the Eleocharis, and then I will try to add a little bit of Marsilea in front of it. So we already have some sort of transition from small and broad-leaf plants towards taller and more narrow-leafed ones. And now let's add a second bush, but there is too little sand for that. So let's increase the height of the substrate. Now let's repeat it on the other side. I think I'm really happy with the foreground. We have some nice details here in both corners. So next up, I would like to add some epiphytes, and for that I have the Anubias mini coin. The Anubias mini coin, when it just appeared on the market, it was quite a sensation because it's so small and it's evergreen. And fun fact about this mini coin, it's been sitting in this cup for 1 year. I got this mini coin a year ago when I was building the Sulawesi twin project, the two tanks, which are quite similar, standing over there on the shelf. This one comes in a gel. So peel off the lid, we can take out the plants, and we have to give them a little wash. What is quite cool about the mini coin being this old, it has grown a lot in the cup. So ideally you can use lukewarm water under the tap and just wash off the gel and or the gel, and I'm doing it here in the cup. But I also see a lot of old yellowish leaves, so I will try to remove them with the tweezers because they are going to die in the aquarium anyway. So, and we can also try to separate it into individual plantlets so that we can distribute it quite evenly on the hardscape. So I can just basically at the rhizome pull the plants apart. This will also make the cleaning a little bit easier. You see, there you go, little clumps of the mini coin Anubias. Just look at how small that is in my hand. Amazing, like a little gem. I think this spot over here is quite nice where the water trickles down. So I'm thinking to simply squeeze it between the rock and the wood. Somehow like this. It fits in the crack, will redirect the water a little bit, the flow. Also this way it will stay moist and maybe grow out of water. Maybe we will see some mini coin flowers. That would be nice. It sits a little bit loose, so I'm going to apply just a tiny little bit of super glue for this using the ARKA Plantscaper, that thing here. What I really like about the Anubias mini coin, it is so small, it's the perfect substitute for Bucephalantras. Don't get me wrong, I love Bucephalandras, but the thing with booze is they melt very easy, especially in a fresh setup. So if you are doing a tank from scratch, no dark start, I would recommend not to introduce the Bucephalandra from day one, rather doing it later on when the tank is more established, because Bucephalandras are very sensitive. However, this is an Anubias, and Anubias are quite sturdy. Oh, it looks lovely. So let's look for another spot. And the last Anubias mini coin will go here on that outside and kind of fill in the gap between the wood and the glass. I just noticed that Anubias were growing roots kind of in an unnatural way, you know, they were like going in all directions, which makes sense. They've been growing in a nutrient-rich medium inside the cup for quite a long time, which is not very natural. So I went inside and I trimmed with my scissors all the roots that were sticking out horizontally, only leaving those more in the vertical position. This is going to make, you know, the root structure look less unnatural, and over time they're going to grow nice roots that are, I don't know, attached to everything around them, and everything that is then sticking out I don't like. So the next plant is the Phalaris arundinacea. Not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but this is a very, very beautiful pond grass. This is super cool. I know this can grow out of water and will be rather tall. It's already getting quite tall. And from that rear section, you know, I wanted to fill in. So that the planting goes a little bit easier, I'm going to fill up the water. Usually I plant into dry soil, then it's no problem, but if it's just simply wet, it not only sticks to the tweezers, but when you create a hole with your tweezers, it doesn't collapse. It stays like this because the soil is sticky. So if you're planting wet, you have to raise the water level to the height of your substrate. I also trimmed the roots significantly because this thing grows some massive roots, but it's good. So it can take the nutrients here from the soil and grow up. I will also leave a little section of that plateau in the back unplanted because there's one special plant missing. And if you have an idea which plant it could be that could go here in the back as well, drop a comment below. I will give a little hint. This plant shouldn't be missing in any pond. So cool, just look at it. Already starts to look very, very interesting. Next up, I'm going to plant the hills. For this, I prepared the terrestrial plants I picked up in the garden center. So what I did, basically ripped the pots apart, cleaned off as much of the potting soil as possible, and gave it a brief wash with water to get rid of as much soil as possible. This way we don't have any hitchhikers. But all three plants have one thing in common. Their roots are massive and need to be shortened. So let's start here with the water Sprite. Boom. Keeping it short. Okay, the peace lily. What is interesting with the peace lily, that black part over here is actually not soil. It's rather a tiny little sponge. That reminds me of rock wool from our aquarium plants. So let's trim the roots on this one. All the roots trimmed. Honestly, I don't know where to put the plants yet. What I'm gonna do is basically hold them behind the tank and see if I like the position. You know, if that is sitting in that corner, that is nice, blocks a little bit the light. The asparagus fern should definitely not be positioned on the very outside because it brings the space out of proportion. So we're going to move it closer to the center here, and it's going to be the first plant to go in. So with our asparagus fern in, I'm going to plant the peace lily, the mini version of the peace lily. A smaller asparagus fern can be added to that formation. Yeah, that cools. It just ties everything together. Okay. Some of the island ground up here, it can be submerged or just above the water level. This plant can actually grow there. Hydrocotyle tripartita. Smells fresh. Hydrocotyle in the place. That means that plateau is done and it's going to fill in and then hang down. That's going to be really good. Now let's address this side. So let's go with the Hygrophila Araguaia closer to the foreground. I'm not going to make 1,000 portions out of it, rather go with one clump of Araguaia so it's nice and compact from the start. I got it in. It's in the soil, it's going to be submerged, and then it can grow out of water. Okay, so we have a little bit of the water Sprite in here. I don't want to use too much because I think this plant can grow quite big. 2 portions of the water Sprite in, and the asparagus fern. I think the terrestrial planting is complete. I also just realized I don't have any tripartita on the right side where the pump is, so I'm going to insert a little portion behind the rock or in between the rock and the sponge. It can dry up, it's above water, but part of the plant is underwater, so maybe it will survive, and then we're going to see. Let me check from the front. Oh yeah, that looks like a nice little jungle. The only thing missing is probably some moss. The only moss I have on hand right now in the studio is Ricardia. Nice thick clumps of the Ricardia. Underneath here is just the perfect spot to wedge in some of it. Yeah, this way it stays moist from the waterfall and it just connects both Anubias so beautifully. Maybe it will grow out at the bottom as well. I can add a tiny little portion underneath there as well. Transitions underneath the wood, looks like one single piece. I like that. We got the ARKA gel type super glue and applied a little bit, a tiny portion here on the moss. Do we need more moss? Only because I have more moss doesn't mean we have to use all of it. Okay, you know what? Down here, like a tiny little thing, so we have our mossy foreground. So yeah, now that the planting is complete, we have to fill it up with water. Again, I'm going to do that from the back. It's really handy having this filtration chamber for this massive drains and refills, especially the refills, because one thing, almost forgot. So remember when I've been adding the pebbles, the sable gravel, I thought a little bit too uniform. I went deep into my warehouse and I found this really old 88 Congo sand. I've been literally missing the smaller gravels in here. Okay, cool. Now let's fill it up. And now let's turn on the waterfall. the pond is built and there is one thing left. I want some inhabitants inside, and I looked into the available options, and definitely there are gonna be some nearite snails, like horned nearite snails to keep everything clean, but also shrimps. And for the shrimps, the black and the red fishbone galaxy. I don't know, I just cannot make a choice. So everyone, comment red if you want to see the red galaxy fishbone shrimps in here, or comment black if you want to see the black fishbone galaxy shrimps in this build. And if you have any other crazy ideas, also let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed watching this mini pond build, you might also like this other mini pond video, which is super cool but also completely different. See you next time.